My mom's fiancé was sincere, a powerful figure in the upper echelons of society. They met during the most humble times of their lives and endured countless hardships together. But just as they were about to finally tie the knot, my mom and I were sold to a foreign country. To protect me, she was blinded, her spine shattered, and when she died, there wasn't a single unmarred inch of skin left on her body. By the time Sincere arrived, he only managed to save a shell-shocked me. I handed him one of my mom's severed fingers, on which was the blood-stained engagement ring he had personally slipped onto her finger. I watched as he tore off the prayer beads from his wrist, transforming completely into someone consumed by vengeance. When those people came after us, my mom used the last of her strength to hide me in a foul-smelling trash heap. Her final words to me were, "Dawn, stay hidden. Don't make a sound, no matter what happens. Wait for Dad to come get you." As she said this, she fumbled to hold me close, cupped my face, and kissed me firmly. Her eyes were now bloody pits, her bones shattered. There was no way she could run away with me. I followed her instructions, covering my mouth and staying silent, not making a single sound. Her agonized screams echoed in my ears, each one more heart-wrenching than the last. I was trembling all over, tears streaming down my face, but I didn't dare cry aloud. Eventually her screams faded, and the people beating her finally stopped. Through a crack in the garbage, I saw my mom's body, bloodied and broken, struggling to crawl on the ground. With her mangled fingers, she groped around aimlessly. At last, it seemed like she found what she was looking for. Using her final ounce of strength, she slipped the ring onto one of her broken fingers. The next moment, I saw those people approach her again with knives, cutting off her fingers one by one. They laughed cruelly, devoid of humanity, but I didn't cry. Instead, I stared at them, forcing myself to memorize each of their faces. I didn't follow my mom's instructions. After they set her body on fire and left, I crawled out of the trash heap. Just before dawn, I found one of her severed fingers, still wearing the blood-stained ring. I recognized it immediately. Whenever my mom showed me that ring, she would smile so sweetly. She told me, "This is the first thing your dad bought me with the money he earned from his first job. It's very cheap, but it's my most precious treasure." Even after Dad became wealthy and bought her countless pieces of expensive jewelry, she always wore that simple silver ring. Even in her final moments, she used her last breath to find it, so I knew I had to give this ring back to Dad. I hid her severed finger close to my chest and crawled back into the trash heap. When Sincere found me there, I was filthy, reeking, and my face was so dirty it was unrecognizable. Yet with bloodshot eyes, he scooped me up and held me tightly. "Dawn," he called my name in a trembling voice. "Dad's here to take you home." I didn't cry. I simply reached into my pocket, pulled out my mom's finger and handed it to him. "Mom's gone," I said. "Only this finger's left." I stared at him, my tears welling up but refusing to fall. Sincere clenched his jaw, the veins on his temples bulging. He was trying to suppress his emotions to stay in control, but in the end, as he held that finger and the ring that was now unrecognizable, his tears fell in heavy drops onto my face. "Dawn," he said hoarsely, "we're taking Mom home." He carefully tucked my mom's finger away, close to his heart, and then lifted me up. But as he stood, he collapsed back to his knees, sobbing my mom's name with heart-wrenching anguish. The prayer beads on his wrist snapped under his grip, scattering everywhere. "Victoria," he murmured my mom's name again, and when he rose this time, his bloodshot eyes told me he had become someone unrecognizable, consumed entirely by darkness. When we returned to the city, Sincere kept me by his side at all times, refusing to let me out of his sight. I was so traumatized by witnessing my mom's brutal death that I stopped speaking altogether. He built a memorial for her, but after the burial he never visited it again. However, he carefully preserved that severed finger, keeping it close to him at all times. Even after my mom's death, many women fought to become Sincere's wife. My maternal grandfather sent my auntie to live with us. She was my mom's half-sister. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears, holding me tightly and refusing to let go. "Oh, poor Dawn," she cried. "So young and already without a mother. What will you do now?" Grandpa said, better your auntie than an outsider marrying in and mistreating Dawn. Blushing, Auntie held me closer, sneaking glances at Sincere with eyes full of admiration she couldn't hide. Brother-in-law, she said shyly, I just feel sorry for Dawn and for my sister. I only want to take care of Dawn on her behalf. I looked at Sincere, who sat on the couch, his expression cold and indifferent as always. He absent-mindedly fiddled with the new prayer beads around his wrist. After a long moment he nodded and said, then stay and take care of Dawn. My mom's best friend, Tina, was furious when she learned that Sincere had allowed Auntie to stay. She stormed into the house, accusing him of being heartless. Victoria's body isn't even cold yet, Tina said. And you're already letting someone new into the house? Even if she's Dawn's aunt, Victoria barely had any contact with her while she was alive. How much sincerity could there possibly be? I don't trust it. If you insist on remarrying, then I'll take Dawn with me. Sincere stood behind his desk, tall and imposing. A slender wrist adorned with a string of prayer beads moved gracefully as his fingers slid across them. Ethan lifted his gaze toward Tina, the faint light streaming through the window casting soft shadows that danced across his handsome, composed features. Tina stared at him, momentarily spellbound. Ethan broke the silence, his voice calm yet resolute. If you're truly worried about Dawn, why not stay and take care of her? Tina stuttered, her words caught in her throat, while her face flushed a deep red. Her previously fiery demeanor seemed to dissipate in an instant. She eventually murmured, Then I'll stay for a few days. Once Dawn adjusts, I'll leave. And so, Tina stayed. That night, I overheard the housekeeper whisper that Auntie was absolutely livid. Yet, she didn't dare confront Ethan directly, and instead locked herself in her room, smashing things in frustration all night. I never liked Auntie. Back when Mom was struggling to make ends meet, neither she nor my grandparents ever acknowledged us. Only after Dad was brought back into the S family did they come groveling. Mom, being kind and soft-hearted, forgave them, but I, having inherited Ethan's cold and detached nature, could not. I may have been young, but I still vividly remembered my grandfather berating me, calling me useless because I started talking later than other children. Auntie sneered, claiming I was just like my father and that I'd grow up to be just as heartless and ungrateful as him. They were never good people. I didn't care much for Tina either, despite her being one of Mom's so-called best friends. When Dad was poor, Tina whispered to Mom to break up with him, saying he wasn't good enough for her. Yet behind Mom's back, she secretly gave Dad chicken soup and slipped him cash. Later, when Dad returned to the S family, Tina tried scaring Mom, saying that now that Dad was successful, he'd never marry her. Mom believed her and cried for days. Once, Mom even packed our things and took me away without a word. When Dad found out, he searched for us day and night without rest. When he finally did find us, he hugged Mom tightly and refused to let go. Not long after, their wedding was set. To marry Mom, Dad knelt for 3 days and nights, passing out multiple times before the conservative elders of the S family reluctantly gave their blessing. My favorite, however, was Mom's other best friend, Fiona, the kindest and most compassionate socialite in town. She and Mom had been college roommates, and she never looked down on Mom despite her humble beginnings. When Mom gave birth to me, neither she nor Dad had much money. It was Aunt Fifi who paid to transfer Mom to the best hospital and later arranged for her to recover in the most luxurious postpartum center. Now that Mom has passed, all those women outside are scrambling to become my stepmother. Only Aunt Fifi cried so hard upon hearing the news that she fainted and had to be hospitalized. Ethan took me to visit Aunt Fifi at the hospital. I was stunned when I saw her. She was so thin and frail, her eyes swollen and red from tears. The moment she saw me, she broke into sobs and hugged me tightly, refusing to let go. Ethan sat silently nearby, watching as we held each other and cried. His eyes, too, were damp. After we had cried our hearts out, Aunt Fifi asked someone to take me to wash my face and have some snacks. Then, turning to Ethan, she asked softly, "Have you found everyone responsible for what happened to Victoria?" Ethan replied evenly, "We've caught those who carried it out, but we still don't have any leads on the mastermind." Aunt Fifi fell silent for a moment before whispering, "Victoria went missing after Olivia invited her out to eat and shop. Ethan, Olivia was the woman your father once arranged for you to marry." Ethan's face darkened. "We have no evidence," he said coldly. Aunt Fifi's voice remained gentle but firm. "The S family has business dealings throughout Southeast Asia, both legitimate and less so." Ethan fingered his prayer beads, letting out a low, bitter laugh. "Indeed, the S family is powerful." Aunt Fifi bit her lip before proposing, "Ethan, I have a suggestion. Why not form an alliance between our families?" Tears slipped down her face once more as she continued, "If the White family and the S family join forces, you'll gain the strength you need to avenge Victoria. Once justice is served, we can divorce. That's all I ask." Her sincerity and devotion were undeniable, her words so heartfelt that they moved even me as I eavesdropped from outside the door. I turned my gaze to Ethan, who seemed visibly affected, his eyes betraying a flicker of emotion. "But Fiona," he said softly, "this would be too unfair to you." Aunt Fifi shook her head. "I've known Victoria for nearly a decade. We weren't sisters, but we were closer than family. She died so tragically." Her voice broke and she looked at Ethan with tear-filled eyes. "If I can't do something for her, I'll never find peace." Faced with such pure and selfless sincerity, it seemed impossible for anyone to refuse. I thought Ethan would say yes. After all, he had just returned to the S family and was still on shaky ground. Though he had more money than he could ever spend, he lacked influence. Marrying Fiona, the beloved socialite and eldest daughter of the White family, could instantly change his standing in the S family. But Ethan declined. Rising to his feet, I could only see his slender figure through the crack in the door, unable to discern his expression. Fiona's cheeks were faintly flushed. Ethan's voice was calm but resolute. "There's no need for that. It wouldn't be fair to you. Besides, if I were to marry someone else, how could I ever face Victoria in the afterlife?" Fiona froze, clearly not expecting such a response. Ethan raised a hand, cutting her off before she could speak further. "I understand your intentions, Fiona, and I'm grateful," he said gently. Fiona lowered her head, tears silently falling. Ethan urged her to rest before turning to leave. As he stepped out, he scooped me up into his arms effortlessly. He held me all the way back to the little home we had shared as a family of 3 for 5 years. There, he prepared lunch for me, 1 meat dish, 1 vegetable dish, and a soup. After dinner, we rested on the balcony's lounge chairs, just as we used to when Mom was still alive. Don gently stroked my head, his gaze soft and full of warmth. I fell asleep in his arms. I don't know how much time passed before I felt the fabric on my back become damp. I tried to lift my head to look at him, but his large hand firmly pressed the back of my head down. I knew he must be crying again. 3 days of peace between Auntie and Tina finally broke. They couldn't hold back and ended up in a shouting match that escalated into a physical fight. Auntie's hair got pulled out in a tuft, and Tina's face was scratched up. Terrified by the chaos, I hid in the cabinet and refused to come out. Sincere blew up in anger and kicked both of them out of the house. They were here to care for me, but instead they made my condition worse. Even Grandpa didn't dare say much. Tina, knowing she was in the wrong, calmed down for the time being. 3 months after Mom passed away, the elders of the S family began pressuring Sincere to marry and have children. They told him, "Getting married isn't just about you, it's for your elder brother and the entire S family. The more kids, the better. You should aim for at least 3 sons, and Don needs to be adopted by your elder brother." Poor Benjamin, weak and frail but kind-hearted, refused to marry because he didn't want to ruin some girl's happiness. But as elders, we can't just watch him remain childless. The Shen family doesn't mind your past or Don's presence. They're still willing to marry their daughter to you. Pick a date and settle the wedding. Back then, Sincere had knelt for 3 days and nights to marry Mom. The S family, worried that their sickly eldest son might not live long and fearing their lineage would end, reluctantly agreed to the marriage. But now that Mom was gone, Olivia had set her sights on marrying into the family as my stepmother. Memories started surfacing, fragments of the past. Olivia was once a spoiled little princess who got to know Mom through Fifi. She acted like she wanted to befriend Mom, who had a soft heart and lacked any sense of caution. The two grew close, often going out together. One night, Olivia couldn't hold back and revealed her true intentions to Mom. At first, she patiently urged Mom to let go, but when Mom adamantly refused, Olivia turned vicious. "Victoria, don't push me," she snapped. "Let me tell you, people like you ordinary folk, I could crush 10 of you with a single slap. If you don't break up with Sincere, I'll sell you overseas. Let me warn you, the traffickers there are ruthless, they'll even harvest your organs." I vaguely remembered Olivia's ferocious, intimidating demeanor back then, but Mom didn't seem frightened at all. She was even smiling foolishly. Somehow, I always felt Olivia was just a paper tiger, fragile and naive. There was this one time Mom took me out, and a particularly ugly bug landed on Olivia's purse. She screamed so loudly she nearly brought the house down, almost fainting. Mom rushed over, slapped the bug dead, and Olivia stared at its corpse, trembling for ages before completely passing out. It wasn't that I underestimated her intelligence or methods. I just didn't think she had it in her to pull off such sinister plans. Of course, whether her family did something behind the scenes, I couldn't say. When the S family pressured Dad to remarry, he took me to meet Olivia. I was genuinely shocked at how much she had changed. She looked like a once beautiful flower that had suddenly wilted from lack of water, dry, listless, and utterly defeated. Her eyes were dull and lifeless. But when she saw me, her gaze abruptly brightened. If Sincere hadn't held her back, she would have lunged at me. I was terrified. Seeing this, Sincere's expression darkened. Then Olivia suddenly dropped to her knees. "Mr. S," she cried, clutching Dad's pant leg as if her life depended on it. Before Dad could pull away, Olivia's face crumpled, and she burst into tears. "Victoria visits me every night," she sobbed. "As soon as I fall asleep, she comes to me. She's angry she blames me for selling her to the Philippines. She haunts me every night, refusing to leave me alone. These past 3 months I haven't had a single good night's sleep. I've begged her endlessly, but nothing works. Finally, she agreed to let me go on one condition: I must swear to take good care of Dawn. She said there are bad people around him, and she's terribly worried. She told me my family is wealthy and powerful, the only ones she knows with connections to the underworld. And she warned me that if I fail to protect Dawn, if even a single hair on his head is harmed, she'll come for me." By the time Olivia finished, she had collapsed on the floor, bawling uncontrollably. I promised her again and again, swore on my life, and only then did she believe me and agree to leave. "Mr. S, I beg you, I can't take it anymore." I stared at Olivia, stunned. Sincere looked at her too, then asked, "So the idea of a marriage alliance was yours?" "Yes," Olivia admitted. I begged and pleaded with my father to agree. Sincere's gaze hardened. "Olivia, I have just one question for you. Do you love me?" Olivia shook her head furiously, as if she were facing some terrifying beast, and waved her hands in panic. "No, Sincere, I wouldn't dare love you, not even if it killed me." Sincere calmly reached for his prayer beads and said, "Let's get married." It was absolutely impossible. "But you could move into the Sincere household as my fiancé to take care of Dawn." Olivia was overjoyed. Sincere continued, "Just for a year." As he said this, he didn't look at Olivia but instead looked at me. Then he patted my head and said, "Dawn, trust Dad. It'll only take a year at most." 6 months after my mom passed away, rumors began to circulate about Sincere's engagement to Olivia. That night, Fiona sat by my mom's grave all night long. The White family searched for her everywhere, deeply worried. When they asked Sincere, he found Fiona at my mom's gravesite. She had already collapsed from exhaustion, fainting softly into his arms. When she woke up, she looked at Sincere with tears streaming down her face. She said, "You know full well that the Shen family is the prime suspect, yet you're choosing to marry Olivia. How can you not fear that one day when you pass on you'll be too ashamed to face Victoria?" Sincere's gaze was calm as he replied, "The Shen family is powerful. It's a strategic move." Fiona retorted, "I told you I could help you." Sincere said, "Fiona, I just can't stand by and watch Olivia continue living as a spoiled princess, enjoying her wealth and privilege. She likes me, doesn't she? She wants to marry me, doesn't she? Fine, I'll grant her wish. Tell me, What could be more satisfying than bringing her into my home and tormenting her day and night? Fiona's face gradually softened. She said, "So you're doing this to get revenge on her?" Sincere nodded. "Yes." Fiona couldn't hold back her emotions. Gently taking his hand, she said, "This is so unfair to you. Having to deal with someone as shallow as Olivia is beneath you. It's a waste of your talents." For the first time, Sincere didn't immediately pull his hand away. He said, "What choice do I have? Being at the mercy of others?" Fiona looked at him then and felt an overwhelming ache in her heart. When my mom's death anniversary approached, Sincere officially took over the Sincere family and stepped into the heart of the elite social circle. With the Shen family backing him, he had to navigate their darker dealings. Over the past year, his hands had undoubtedly been stained. Everyone around him tread carefully, fearing even the slightest misstep. Even I, as a child, often felt afraid. His once gentle demeanor, the warmth and love he had for my mom, seemed to have vanished completely. A week before the anniversary, Sincere's new company overseas held its inauguration. He decided to bring Olivia and me to France. The night before our departure, he called Fiona. He said, "The show is about to begin, Fifi. Would you like to come with us?" On the other end of the line, Fiona laughed gleefully. "All right, Sincere, I'll come with you." In the past 6 months, Sincere had started calling her Fifi, and in the business world, Fiona had gone to great lengths to support him. Sometimes when I was lost in thought, I'd wonder if I had to have a stepmother, my mom might have chosen someone like Fiona. She seemed flawless, impeccable in every way. Even Sincere over the past year had gradually opened his heart to her. The day we arrived in France, it rained heavily. By the afternoon, the rain stopped and the sky was painted with fiery clouds. Sincere picked me up and stood there, gazing at the burning horizon. I knew he was thinking of my mom again. So was I. I remembered the fire that night, the flames roaring as my mom let out her final scream. I looked up at him. His eyes were bloodshot, perhaps from the reflection of the fiery sky. On the third evening, Sincere told Fiona there was a banquet that night. Fiona understood tonight everything would be decided. Stylists and makeup artists brought racks of elegant dresses for her to choose from. Fiona ultimately picked a bright red long fishtail gown with a dramatic train. The banquet was held on a cruise ship. As Fiona boarded, the heel of her high-heeled shoe got caught in the gangway and snapped. She felt an inexplicable sense of unease. The ship was brightly lit, and armed guards and mercenaries stood on the deck. For a brief moment, she considered backing out. But then Sincere appeared. He was wearing a black trench coat over a matching tailored suit. His tall figure exuded an air of elegance and danger. He looked down at Fiona and gave her a faint smile. "Fifi, come here." Fiona seemed entranced. She lifted her gown and stepped barefoot onto the gangway, moving closer one step at a time. She extended her hand, but Sincere didn't take it. Instead, he held a cigarette between his fingers, the smoke curling lazily in the night air. "Go change your shoes," he said. "I'll finish this cigarette." Reluctantly, Fiona left. Sincere leaned against the railing, gazing out at the endless expanse of water. Calmly, he finished his cigarette. At last, he lowered his gaze to the wedding ring on his finger. "Victoria," he murmured, his voice soft. He touched the ring, his expression tender. "Wish me luck." Even years later, I would vividly remember that night. Sincere didn't shield me from the bloodshed that unfolded. I was only 6 years old, but my childhood had already ended. When Fiona returned impeccably dressed and stepped into the grand banquet hall, she asked, "Why are there so few people?" Victoria's voice trailed off as she suddenly fell silent. She quickly realized that the people present were not distinguished guests from the country, but rather individuals she knew all too well. Her eyes first landed on Tina, then on Auntie, and finally on her grandfather. Her expression shifted dramatically, and her body instinctively tried to back away, only to be blocked by the security guards behind her. The massive, opulent doors slammed shut and locked. Victoria began to tremble, her eyes darting around the room in panic, until she finally spotted Sincere seated in the corner on a black leather sofa, dressed entirely in black. Relief flooded over her as though she had found a lifeline. "Sincere," She started to call out, but her voice abruptly cut off as if her throat had been seized by an invisible hand. A bloodied, unrecognizable figure was suddenly thrown onto the floor just a meter away from her by two tall, dark-skinned mercenaries. The overwhelming stench of blood filled the air, and the mangled, writhing body resembled little more than a heap of torn flesh. Victoria screamed in terror, her legs giving out as she collapsed onto the ground. Sincere's voice was steady and commanding as he asked, "Do you recognize him?" It was only then that Victoria managed to identify the figure. The realization struck her like a thunderbolt. It was Benjamin, the frail and sickly eldest son of the family. Benjamin, reduced to such a grotesque state. Victoria's scream abruptly stopped, her wide eyes fixated on Sincere. You, she stammered. Sincere's face remained as calm and expressionless as a still lake. He didn't look at Victoria, but instead turned his gaze toward the other pale-faced individuals in the room. His voice carried a cold finality as he said, "One by one, I want you all to confess everything you've done. If you don't, you'll end up just like him." Before Sincere had even finished speaking, Auntie leapt to her feet, her legs trembling uncontrollably. "Brother-in-law," she pleaded with a quivering voice, "if I tell you everything, you won't kill me, right?" Sincere simply turned the ring on his finger, his tone indifferent. "You know very well whether your actions deserve death." Auntie cried out, "Brother-in-law, I'll tell you everything, I'll confess it all. I was the one who convinced Dad to cut off Emma's allowance and ignore her struggles. I also falsely accused Emma of stealing my money, so Dad would beat her. When you and Emma were dating, I was the one who reported it to the school, claiming she was engaging in underage romance. She was almost expelled because of me. When Emma gave birth to Dawn, I even tried to sneak into your room while she was recovering, but the maid caught me. After Emma passed away, I thought I could use taking care of Dawn as an excuse to marry you." Tears streamed down her face as she continued, "But Emma's death had nothing to do with me, brother-in-law. You know that neither Dad nor I had the power to reach across the ocean and influence things in your country." Sincere nodded slowly. "You're right," he said. He knew that Emma's death had nothing to do with Sophia. He also knew that Sophia's petty, spiteful behavior was irritating but hardly deserving of death. But still, he couldn't hold back any longer. Gritting his teeth, he declared, "You don't deserve to die, but that tongue of yours is too revolting." "Brother-in-law," Sophia screamed. Sincere closed his eyes. "Aunt, live Dawn, please, save your aunt," Sophia shouted as she was dragged away. Her desperate cries turned toward me, but I closed my eyes as well. Her voice faded into silence. I thought to myself that she would never again have the chance to chatter on and irritate everyone around her. Tina's face was as pale as a sheet of toilet paper, but she still forced herself to stand, her jaw clenched. "After you and Victoria started dating," she began, "I was the one who introduced you to her. From the moment I first saw you, I liked you, but you never once looked at me. I wanted so badly for you and Victoria to break up, thinking that if you did, I'd have a chance. I kept telling Victoria that you were too poor, that you were just an orphan who had been trafficked and didn't deserve her. But she never listened to me. She only cared more about you, loved you more." Tina's voice cracked as she continued. "Then, when your family found you and brought you back, your status transformed. I started telling Victoria that now that you were successful, you'd surely leave her for someone better. At first, she didn't believe me, but I kept at it, showing her examples until she began to doubt. Even then, you two didn't break up. Instead, you were going to get married. I was so jealous I could hardly breathe. But I never wanted Victoria dead. I just thought if she were no longer with you, she'd be just like me, ordinary and forgotten. It was Fiona. Yes, Fiona." Tina suddenly pointed at Victoria. "She's the one who told me she had a way to make you and Victoria break up. I believed her. I was foolish enough to trust her." She broke down into sobs, her hands covering her face. "But I never ever imagined she would have Victoria killed. If I had known, I would never have gone along with it, not even if it cost me my life." Watching Tina cry, I thought to myself how right first impressions can be. I had disliked her for as long as I could remember, But Mom always spoke about her fondly, reminding me how Tina had bought her breakfast for an entire semester back in school. "Your Aunt Tina has a sharp tongue, but she has a good heart," Mom used to say. Back when I had no money and nearly starved, it was Tina who helped me through it. But Mom didn't know that people change. As Tina was dragged away, my grandfather was so terrified that he wet himself. He had been a man who cheated on his wife, abandoned his family, and lived a life of indulgence. While his sins weren't the worst imaginable, they were enough to cost my grandmother her life from sheer heartbreak. My mom endured unimaginable hardships and grievances in her youth, barely had her body turned cold before he hastily tried to bring his beloved youngest daughter into our home as my stepmother. I hated him for it. Yet at this moment, looking at his head full of white hair and his face frozen in shock and disbelief, I couldn't help but feel an indescribable sorrow and bitterness. If my mom were still alive, with her kind and forgiving nature, she probably wouldn't have held a grudge against him. The hall gradually emptied. Soon I could barely recognize any of the remaining people, until Dad told me who they were, people who had once bullied my mom. In the end, only Fiona, pale as a ghost, and 6 specially treated skulls remained in the hall. These 6 skulls belonged to the scum who had murdered my mom. Fiona rasped in a hoarse voice, "Sincere, when did you find out?" Sincere lowered his head, gently brushing the ring on his finger. He said, "That day at the hospital, when you asked me why I had to marry you first." Sincere slowly lifted his gaze. His eyes were deep and dark, like an ancient well, one that had long run dry, lifeless. He continued, "Because after you said those words, I suddenly remembered something Victoria once told me." Fiona asked, "What did she say?" Sincere replied, "When she gave birth to Dawn, she suffered postpartum hemorrhaging and was very weak. She woke up, looked at Dawn, and told me, 'Sincere, do you know what I was thinking about before I passed out? If I died, the only person I'd trust to take care of you and Dawn would be Fifi.' You haven't forgotten, have you?" When she said that, you happened to walk in. Fiona asked, "And that's enough to convict me? What makes you so sure I hired someone to kill her? Do you have proof? Do you have evidence that I orchestrated all of this?" Sincere chuckled darkly. "You're clever. From start to finish, you kept yourself completely clean. You even misled me into suspecting Olivia, because the Shen family has connections to the underworld and vast business empires across many countries, making them the most obvious suspect. At first I did suspect her, especially since Olivia had indeed threatened Victoria, saying she'd sell her overseas. But I soon realized Olivia wasn't the mastermind." Fiona retorted, "How did you figure that out? With the Shen family's resources, wouldn't it have been easy for them to cover their tracks?" Sincere replied, "If the Shen family had truly done it, they wouldn't have married off their precious daughter to me." "Fiona, do you really think Olivia's father, a man known for his wisdom and experience, would make such a foolish decision regarding his daughter's future? Put yourself in his shoes. Would you marry your daughter to a man who had a blood feud with your family?" Sincere stepped forward, pressing his foot onto Fiona's fingers. "You thought leaving yourself 2 escape routes would keep you safe. You thought Benjamin and Olivia could serve as your scapegoats, ensuring your safety for a lifetime. But when you disguised yourself and snuck out of Benjamin's villa late at night, I already had a rough idea of the truth. He was infatuated with you, yet he knew he couldn't make you happy. So he let himself be deceived by you, willingly becoming a puppet at your mercy. Even in death, he shouldered all the blame for you. But Fiona, you're as cold and venomous as a snake. You never deserved him. His downfall was entirely your doing." Sincere kicked Fiona in the shoulder. "All the suffering Victoria endured, I'll make you pay for it 100-fold, 1,000-fold. With a wave of his hand, several men surged forward and tightly bound Fiona's limbs. Fiona struggled desperately, shouting, "If you want revenge, go after the right people." Victoria was lured out by Tina, and the one who paid for it was Benjamin. The people who harmed Victoria were all killed by you. Sincere, I had nothing to do with it. How was I supposed to know that Benjamin liked me? How was I supposed to know he'd harm Victoria to please me? What he did has nothing to do with me. Don't forget how much I contributed to your success." My family, the Whites, supported you with everything they had. If you dare harm me, aren't you afraid of losing everything you've worked for?" Sincere laughed softly. "You're right. I did achieve what I have today thanks to you and the Whites. But as for my so-called future, do you really think I care?" Fiona's eyes widened in shock. "Sincere, you're insane. Victoria is already dead, and now the entire S family is yours. Soon, half of the White family will be yours too. You can have anything you want. Is it worth throwing it all away for a dead woman?" Sincere replied, enunciating every word. "For women like you, it's not worth it. But for Victoria, I'd walk through fire and embrace death 1,000 times over, and I'd do it gladly." That night, on the luxury cruise ship in the middle of the ocean, Fiona's screams echoed through the dark waters for hours. It was said that her 10 fingers were severed one by one. Every bone in her body was broken, inch by inch. Her flesh was sliced off piece by piece with a small, razor-sharp blade. Her eyes were the last to be gouged out, left till the end so she could see it all. She watched as her body was mutilated, and in the end she was burned alive in a raging fire. Her charred remains were tossed into the open sea. After doing all this, Sincere left the mess behind and took me back to the U.S. As for how much effort the Smith family needed to clean up the aftermath, it had nothing to do with us. Before the trip, Dad had negotiated with the Smith family. The Smiths would handle the cleanup, and as long as it was done thoroughly, Dad promised to make peace with them. Fiona left the country and mysteriously disappeared. At the same time, the eldest son of the Sincere family, Benjamin, also vanished under strange circumstances. Sincere and the Smith family spent 3 months abroad searching for them. Eventually, a marine rescue team found remains containing Fiona's DNA and retrieved a severed limb from which Benjamin's DNA was extracted. According to a foreign sailor, he had seen the two meeting secretly on the deck late at night and witnessed a quarrel between them. Benjamin had even laid hands on Fiona. The sailor tried to intervene but was pulled away. What happened after that remains unclear, but their deaths were widely regarded as an accidental tragedy stemming from a lover's quarrel. When news reached the social circles in Washington, people were shocked. No one had expected Fiona and Benjamin to have such a secret relationship, nor had they imagined Fiona managing to entangle herself with both Sincere and Benjamin at the same time. Her greed led to her tragic end, leaving no remains behind. It was a cautionary tale. The Fiona family refused to believe her death was accidental, but with no evidence to disprove it, they had to accept the official explanation. Afterward, the Fiona family seemed to fall into a streak of bad luck. Within just 5 years, the once prominent family in Washington faded into obscurity. Rumor had it that the younger generation was entirely unpromising, and the remaining family assets would soon be squandered. On the bright side, Olivia's health had completely recovered. She no longer dreamed of my mom. Dad and Olivia annulled their engagement, and Olivia happily returned to the Smith family. Over the past year, perhaps because she once vowed to my mom's ghost to take good care of me, Olivia had been very attentive. She developed genuine affection for me, visiting me frequently, though she always chose times when Dad wasn't around. If she accidentally ran into him, she'd flee faster than a rabbit. On the anniversary of Mom's passing, I noticed Dad's left hand was wrapped in thick bandages. Later, when the bandages were removed, his ring finger was missing. The wound was clean and neat. It was no accident. Dad took me to Mom's grave once, and I noticed signs that her grave had been disturbed. I understood then, Dad had buried the only severed finger of Mom's that remained alongside her. By the time I turned 18, Sincere had already grown a head full of gray hair. Over the years, he worked tirelessly, refusing help from anyone, and took care of me personally. I inherited my dad's looks, but my eyes were becoming more like Mom's. He often stared at my eyes in a daze, and sometimes he'd still call out, "Victoria!" But she had been gone for 13 years. During those 13 years, there were initially many people who encouraged Sincere to remarry. But as time passed, no one brought it up anymore. That year, when we returned from France, we brought back a girl 2 years younger than me. Dad named her Lily. She was an orphan, but her background and upbringing were clean and unproblematic. Dad had carefully selected her from nearly 100 children to stay by my side as a companion. After coming back from France, I gradually began to speak more, especially when I was with Lily. I subconsciously felt that we were very similar. People with the same wounds could hold each other close and find warmth. While I didn't have my mom, I still had the love of my dad. But Lily lost both her parents when she was 3. We loved lying on the rooftop, whispering secrets that only we could understand. Those pains couldn't be shared with others, but we could share them with each other. In the blink of an eye, a decade passed. I turned 20 and Lily was 18. Dad had taught her exceptionally well, and I adored her. After graduating college at 22, I began to take over the family business. When Lily graduated and began assisting me, Sincere finally started letting go. As I independently handled several challenging business matters, Dad completely handed over control of the company. In my spare time, I learned antique restoration, a subject that both Mom and Fiona had studied. Mom always overshadowed Fiona in this field. Their mentor had once said, "Victoria has a calmer heart and steadier hands. Fifi always lacks that extra touch. She should learn from Victoria." Perhaps this was one reason Fiona went to such lengths to have my mom's fingers severed one by one. Eventually, I entrusted the company's financial management to Lily. Olivia rushed to me multiple times trying to dissuade me. She even pleaded with me earnestly, saying, "Dawn, how can you let a woman handle the finances? You might not have money to fight lawsuits in the future. Don't forget, Lily is only your dad's adopted daughter. Even if she were your biological sister, families have fought over inheritance before. Please, don't make such a foolish mistake. You're the only son of your parents." The Sincere family couldn't let others take advantage of them. My relationship with Olivia had grown quite close. When she said something along those lines, I cheekily retorted, "Isn't that why we have you, Aunt Liv? If Lily ever has second thoughts in the future, you can just ship her off abroad." Hearing this, Olivia looked even more troubled. I was born a pampered princess who never had to lift a finger. I never planned to take over any family business, never intended to worry about anything. My plan was to spend money recklessly for the rest of my life. Now here I am, middle-aged, with even greater responsibilities. She made me laugh. I told her, "Aunt Liv, don't you think being a badass, influential woman is pretty cool?" Olivia thought about it seriously, as if the idea tempted her. She patted my head for what felt like forever. Then, out of nowhere, her eyes reddened as if she was about to cry. I gently hugged her. I understood. As the years went by, fewer and fewer people remembered my mom. Even Auntie no longer muttered vague complaints about her under her breath. My grandfather, who had suffered a stroke, passed away several years ago. His last 2 years were spent bedridden, uncared for, with severe bed sores. He suffered greatly and in the end longed for death as a release. As for Tina, she later married a man with a disability. Life didn't treat her kindly. Her husband drank heavily when in a bad mood and would insult and sometimes even hit her. Yet she kept having children, one after another, and divorce was never an option. The dead are gone forever, while the living continue to struggle. But it's okay. There's me, Dad, Aunt Liv, and even some strangers I don't know who still remember my mom. Fresh flowers always adorned her grave. Her professor would visit regularly. The man she loved thought of her every single second. Her beloved son was determined to fulfill her unfinished dreams. And then there was Aunt Liv. My mom probably never imagined that, in the end, it would be Olivia who would keep her memory alive and look after me. A year after I graduated, Dad held a wedding for Lily and me. When Lily and I knelt before him during the ceremony, his smile was both tender and full of relief. Yet deep inside, I had a sinking feeling, a premonition of something bad. After the wedding, I stayed by his side constantly. But on the anniversary of my mom's death, Dad passed away. Perhaps he didn't want me to feel the pain of saying goodbye. Maybe he couldn't bear to see me grieve. So he left quietly, without allowing me to send him off. He only left me a letter. In his letter, he wrote, "Dawn, forgive me. Your mom has been so lonely. I need to be with her. After I'm gone, cremate me. Scatter my ashes where your mom passed away. I'm going to find her. I'm going to find my Victoria. Dawn, Your dad is happy. In this moment, I am the happiest I've been in 18 years. So, let me go. Will you send me off yourself, okay, Dawn? Clutching the letter, I crouched on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Lily didn't disturb me. She simply stayed by my side quietly, just like when we were kids. She was my shadow, my little tail, my safe harbor, my source of comfort. I took Dad's ashes to the place where my mom had passed away. The landfill was no longer the chaotic, filthy sight it once was. Relying on my memories, I found the spot and gently scattered his ashes. Lily held my hand the entire time and never let go. That night, I had the most beautiful dream. In it, Dad was young and handsome, his hair still jet black. Mom was beautiful and gentle, her smile as sweet as ever. They were holding my hands as I tottered toward them, learning to walk. I stumbled into their arms, and Dad lifted me high onto his shoulders. Mom laughed and laughed, her joy lighting up the scene. When Dad looked at her, his eyes were filled with love. In my dream, I must have cried my heart out. My pillow was soaked through. Lily whispered softly, "Dawn, I'll always be here for you." In the 3rd year of our marriage, Lily became pregnant. On the day she went into labor, Olivia arrived with nearly 100 bodyguards, surrounding the hospital on all sides. She truly seemed like a formidable, fearless woman now, and her presence gave Lily a deep sense of security. Lily gave birth to a pair of healthy twins, a boy and a girl. We named the boy Sincere Jr. and the girl Victoria Jr. These names weren't chosen solely by me, but were a decision Lily and I made together. Lily said, "I have no name, no family, I'm just an orphan. I want your parents to rest in peace, knowing they're remembered." When the twins turned a month old, Lily and I brought them to my parents' grave. The gravesite was surrounded by blooming roses, their fragrance filling the air. Amidst the beautiful flowers, I felt as if I could see my young dad and mom again. They say good people are reborn into good families, blessed with fortune in their next lives. My parents must have found their way to a kind, loving home by now, cherished and adored. If there is a next life, I hope I can still be their son. If there truly is another life, then in that lifetime, the 3 of us will never be separated again.